Hello, my name is Bruno Pedro. I'm the author of the Building an API Product book, and I'm here to show you how to build a successful API product. So thanks for attending, and let's get started. The first question that you can ask about how to build a successful API product is, what is an API, right? So what exactly is an API? So there are many definitions of APIs, some of them more technical than others. I thought that it could be interesting to show you, a little bit of the history of APIs, or how APIs came to be what they are now, so you can also understand what you can do with them and how they can, be successful products. So this is just a brief, summarized version of the history of web APIs. So pay attention that I'm using the term web APIs here because there are other kinds of APIs that do not necessarily run on the web. But let's focus on web APIs because they are, the type of APIs that most people use and most people deal with nowadays. So it all started in the 1980s with the popularity of the Unix operating system. So at the time, the Unix operating systems ran on heavy machines, on heavy servers mostly, and at that time some of them started to be available in different locations, and they started to be connected between themselves. So there was a need to connect these servers and these machines together so information could be shared, and so different applications from different machines could be exposed to one another. That was more or less the beginning of what we call sockets. So sockets are a way for different machines to interoperate and to share information. And from sockets came something that Sun Microsystems, a popular company at the time, created called remote procedure calls. Remote procedure call is a more elaborate way of letting one application make a request to a function or a procedure that is available in a remote application. So then you can have applications that would make calls to remote applications and use those functions as if they were running locally. So this was a huge breakthrough at the time because it allowed people to write and to create products that would be would have parts of them be running locally, and then other parts of them were running remotely without the user even knowing about it or even noticing about it most of the time. So from there, a concept emerged called SOA or SOA, called the service-oriented architecture. And the goal of SOA was to standardize the way people were doing these remote procedure calls and the way different people were integrating these local applications with other remote ones. SOA became very popular, and in fact, it became the origin of one type of API that some of you might be familiar with, called SOAP. And this was the main, let's say, type of API that was behind this SOA movement and behind the notion that you could build applications that were constituted by parts or features that were spread over the network. More or less at the same time, with the creation of the World Wide Web, there was an explosion of APIs, and there was even a simplification of the way people were building APIs publicly. So REST became the norm, or the most popular way of creating APIs, because mostly of its simplification, its easy way to build a simple API. And many different web applications were offering APIs to their users at the time. So users were able to call the APIs directly and also integrate those features from those web applications into their own applications. Because of this oversimplification and also this explosion of APIs running over the web, there was a need to control, how data and how the information was being shared, and what kind of information was being shared. So both Google and also Facebook came up with two different protocols or two different kinds of APIs that had that goal. So gRPC was one of them, and GraphQL was another. So it became more, the way to build APIs became more controllable, uh, not as simple or as ad hoc as before with REST, and the way you control the data that is shared became much, much better. Both gRPC, GraphQL are being used, heavily today, as well as REST and still SOAP to some extent. So how, knowing all this and knowing where we are today, uh, I like to see APIs, not as something technological or not, knowing all the technology. I like to see them as a way to, in fact, to integrate products. So as you just saw, in the origin, APIs are, as simple as a way to integrate different apps or different products together. Um, in fact, this notion of a product that has its own internal features and then other features that are external or remote is what I like to call the integrated product. So the integrated product here becomes something that has much higher value than just the internal or the original product, because it uses features that come from other different products as well. And with these integrations, each use case can be seen as one. So you can see each one of these possible integrations as a use case with potential customers using the integration with the products, and also with specific costs associated to it, and with a specific revenue stream for the integration. This is interesting as well. If you think about another concept that was created by Regis McKenna. So Regis McKenna is a marketer that became famous after working with Intel and also Apple. So is the person behind the marketing of the Intel microprocessor, and also the person that helped Apple market and commercialize their first computer. So in fact, he thought that Apple's computer itself was hard to sell at the time, because people were not being able to see it as something that would help them, with their lives, getting their jobs done. So he came up with this concept of whole product, as opposed to the generic product that you buy. And the whole product is in fact uh, the generic one, so the computer in this example, plus all the other things that you need, to get your job done by using the computer. So in this example of computer, you would not want to buy a computer if it didn't come with the peripherals like the keyboard, the mouse, let's say the camera, and also the applications that you want to use, and even the connectivity, or even being able to access the internet. So to you, the computer is not just the hardware, the machine, but it's everything that surrounds it and that makes it a whole product, and that gives you a reason to buy it, to buy the computer, right? This is interesting because there's a parallel here between the whole product and APIs and integrations and what I just said before, and called the integrated products. So we can see, we can think about these things in more or less the same way, right? So integrating products in one way is in fact a door to, getting more people to buy your API products. So knowing all this, what exactly, and going back to the title of this presentation, how to build a successful API product, what exactly is success here in the context of API products? Is it related to being able to generate revenue? Or is it something related to having a large number of customers? Or is it being profitable? Or many of these things together? Let's see. And let's first take a look at who your potential customers can be when you start building your API product. So if you look at this chart here, you'd probably be surprised, as I was the first time I saw something like this. Is that nowadays more than half of all API consumers are not developers, and even more than half of API producers are also not developers. So what was once something exclusive or almost exclusive to the software development world, building and using APIs, is becoming something that more and more non-developers are doing every day. This is quite fascinating to me for different reasons. We're going to see some of them. And the first one is that if you just think about the potential to sell your API product to developers versus non-developers, we are looking at a total addressable market of non-developers from banking, education, and healthcare sectors. So these are the top sectors that influence, that are in the origin of all these non-developers. They have a total addressable market of around 275 million people, versus if you look at latest numbers for developers, of a total addressable market of less than 100 million people. So we're talking about different numbers here, and potentially getting into the hands of many more people if you target a non-developer audience. So why are non-developers important? So what are the other factors make you think that you should also address non-developers? Another factor is related to retention, so user retention. So retention is when users repeatedly consume your API product every day or every week or every month. So it means that there's here a pattern of usage, and those customers or users, they are not going away. They keep using your API product over and over and over. So if you look at this funnel here, it measures the different steps along the way since when a user first signs up, so that's the acquisition, to when a user first consumes your API product, so the what many people call the hello world of APIs, so that's the activation, to when someone keeps repeatedly using your API, the retention, to when they tell other people that they should use your API, that's the referral step, and finally to the last step, the revenue step, when they actually spend money with you. So this is an important funnel to understand, because it helps you, first of all, it helps you know how many users you have on each step, what's the percentage of those users, and what you can do to increase the percentage and make more people or more of those users become customers by reaching the bottom of the funnel. What's also fascinating here is, to me, is that developers themselves, they contribute or drive most of the acquisition and activation, but not so much of retention and referral. Why? Because developers usually they interact with your API once in the very beginning when they are building an integration, and then they don't have any reason to interact with your API again unless there's a breaking change or a problem with the API and the developer needs to fix something. So then after that, the people that use your API are non-developers, and these are the ones that really contribute to the retention here, to the retention rate and to the growth of your API. And why is retention that important? Let's see. Retention, in fact, is one of the key drivers of revenue. So, and revenue is something that you want to reach as quickly as possible, to be successful, right? So an interesting aspect here is called customer lifetime value, and its relation to retention. So CLTV, so the customer lifetime value, can be calculated by using this formula where ARPU is the average revenue per user, R is the retention, and D is a discount factor usually associated to inflation. Right, so we're going to assume here a discount factor of 0. Let's assume there's no interest rates or inflation in place, and let's assume an ARPU of 1 to make things simple. So as you can see by the chart, it's interesting to see that until a certain point, it almost looks linear, but then at around a little bit after 50% of retention rate, you see that it explodes into an exponential growth. So it means that just by increasing retention 1 or 2% after you reach a certain point, you get a huge increase in customer lifetime value. So customer lifetime value is an important figure because it represents how much value you can obtain from each one of the customers that you currently have. So if you have let's say a customer that pays you let's say 100 euros or $100 over time, you need to know how much you expect them to be valued at in, let's say, 1 year or 5 or 10 years. And you should be able to know that because you should be able to understand how much you can spend in obtaining each one of these customers. So you understand if you're generating a profit or if you're having a loss. Right? So to do that, there's a way, there's something that you can use to calculate that, to calculate the possibility of generating profit using the customer lifetime value and the customer acquisition cost, the CAC. So this ratio here determines whether or not at any given time you are generating profits, you are losing money, and even if you are generating profit, how large that profit is and what you can do with it. So generally speaking, a ratio of less than 1 means that you are at loss, and in between 1.5 and 3 means success. So it means that you are generating profit, but not too much profit, because if you are above 3, you could be spending that extra money in acquiring more customers, and then you repeat the cycle over and over again. So it's important to understand the CLTV, how it's related to retention, the retention rate, and what user segment can drive most of that retention, so that you can then generate the most profits. So in a way, what I'm believing in more and more is that we should build APIs for non-developers. So non-developers are, in essence, what will, how you can draw a direct line, from acquiring new users to generating profits. And to build for non-developers, you can use different methodologies than the ones you use for, when you're building for developers. So one of them is understanding the problems that your potential users have. You can use here something called the jobs to be done framework, where you can break, each one of the problems that the potential user has into 3 parts. So understanding the situation, the motivation, and what they need to do, basically. So the situation is as simple as asking the user where they are, or what they are trying to do when they have the problem. And then motivation, um, you need to ask the user what exactly do they want to achieve. So this is what we can call the problem, right? And then finally, uh, what they expect the outcome to be after they achieve, what they're looking to achieve. So that's what we can call the benefit. So the three things that you can extract here are the location. So location in our perspective doesn't mean a physical location, but it means um, potentially what type of application the user was at the time. The problem is exactly what problem the user was facing, and the benefit is you can also use it to communicate back, to your customers, is what those users would get after they get that job done. So, and why is the location important? So, and here again, not talking about physical location, but talking more about applications and things, tools that these potential customers are using. It's important because it's a way for you to select and design the architectural style of your API. So, among the many different types of APIs that we looked at before, how do you decide which one to adopt? How do you decide which one to use? So one way is to understand the location. So this is just an example. This table is just an example to show you that you can quickly understand that, for example, if a user tells you that they are having a problem and they use ChatGPT all the time, then you probably need to use REST. Otherwise, your API, the user won't be able to consume your API from inside ChatGPT. So location matters a lot. On the other hand, you can also think about successful API products that are products that offer what customers need. So this is what I call the API hierarchy of needs. And it starts at the bottom with usability, showing that is the API easy to use. So it's related to location as well, because if the user cannot use it from within the app that they are using every day, they won't be able to use your API. And then obviously it should work. Functionality, the second layer, should also be applied here. And after that, it should work repeatedly. It should be reliable over time. It should not break, and it should not be slow over time. After that, you can think about proficiency. Proficiency meaning here that it can be easily integrated with other products. So you can use it from within ChatGPT, but potentially you could also use it from inside many other different applications. And at the very top, it's what I call creativity, meaning that users can use your API in unexpected ways. So they can integrate your API or use it from inside an application in ways that you never thought of in the beginning. So this is the API hierarchy of needs, and it's quite important to go over it when you're trying to build your API product. And finally, still related to putting your API in the hands of potential customers, you see here how distributing your API can help you increase the acquisition and increase the number of signups. So this is just an example of the types, of different ways that you can use to distribute your API. So you can build an API portal. You can also build, or interact with an existing community that helps you write and distribute documentation about the API. And you can use one of existing marketplaces. So marketplaces here for example, Postman has an API hub, and even ChatGPT has a marketplace of plugins. So the more you penetrate these different elements of distribution, the more options you have to acquiring customers and opening doors for them to find you. So in all this together is, in my opinion, what constitutes, the steps for you to build API products that are successful over time and that meet the needs of your users. There's much more than this. So in summary, we looked now at APIs that integrate products. We also looked at the drivers of retention, non-developers, how to measure profitability, how to understand if you're profitable and the relationship to retention, how to understand the problems that user have using the jobs to be done framework, knowing that location matters, being on the apps and tools that your customers are using is mostly important, and finally building what customers needs so they use your API products effectively. So all these together and even much more in my book, Building an API Product, is what you can find to learn how to design, implement, release, and maintain API products that meet user needs. Thank you. And if you want to get in touch, I am at brunopedro.com. So you can find all the information from me on that website.